I went very hard on marketing. You of all people, Jim, know how important that is. So I went very hard on it, and it's what got me on the map. I was the new guy in town. All the other roofing contractors I consider them legacy roofers. They've all been here for 20 plus years. And here I am trying to make a name for myself. I had to go after these people, and I went pretty hard. I went very hard on marketing, and it's what got me on the map.
Welcome to the Roofing Success Podcast. I'm Jim Aline, and I'm here to bring you insights from top leaders in the roofing industry to help you grow and scale your roofing business.
Stephen Lane with Roughneck Roofing. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, Jim. How are you, bud?
Good, man. I'm glad to have you on the show. I know, we've talked, you've been a listener. We've met at an event or two and had some conversations, and it's good to have you on the show, man. Down in Oklahoma doing retail work. What the heck is wrong with you, man?
Yeah, that's right. I tell you, I would prefer some storms every once in a while, but they just seem to kind of split around us. They hit Oklahoma City, they hit out west, and haven't really hit my way. I'm in Muskogee, so
okay,
yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
So they avoid you over there in Muskogee.
Yep.
You don't get the storm damage as much, which forced you to go that route. How'd you get into roofing? What's your journey been?
Well, by necessity, actually. So I was in the oilfield industry, doing wholesale distribution to the oilfield industry, and basically we were selling consumables. And with the oilfield, it's a very cyclical business, as you know. You're either making some really good money or you're not making any money. And we were in our second downturn in the business since I had been there, and it was 2020, and I thought to myself, I need to make some additional money because I was riding on pushing a 40% pay cut, give or take. And my wife was a teacher at the school here, so she wasn't making a whole ton of money. So we were kind of dipping into savings here and there. And I thought, if there's something that I can do to make some additional money until the soil field comes back, I need to do it. And I actually spoke to a friend of mine who owns a roofing company here in town. And he wanted to hire me as a salesman for his company, but his business partner didn't want to do that at the time. So my friend said, "Hey, man, just start your own thing, go for it." And with his blessing, I went out and did it. And I I kind of just looked around and thought, well, what can I do to get myself on the map? And I started off with, I think, 50 yard signs, and I scattered them out everywhere, man. And then I noticed no other roofing contractors around had active websites. They didn't do any Facebook, social media things. So I kicked those both off, and Google. I kicked all those off immediately, and it caught traction pretty big because at the time nobody was really using in my area social media to really promote any sort of home service business. So I kicked that off and got it going. So I was really just looking to make, um, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 a month just to skate by until the oil field come back. And then it kind of caught fire, and it turns out I made this a long-term play.
Yeah. I'm guessing you got to the point where you started making the money that you were in the oil business and maybe past that and went, whoa, maybe I don't have to go back there.
That's right. That's about how it worked. I had
Yeah.
a really good job, I will tell you, and I was working for someone that was a great company, and actually my mentor. And I sat down with him. Matter of fact, the name of his business is Roughneck Supply. So
Okay.
I kind of stole the name, but I was doing both jobs for 6-8 months, and I went to him and I said, "Hey, look at these numbers. Let's talk about this. You think I should go for this?" And I'll never forget it. His quote to me was, "Stephen, I think everybody should try to own a business someday." That's what he. So I
Mm,
took that as like, oh, here I go. So I gave 5-6 month notice, and I went for it.
yeah. Did he give you any other advice on your way to starting it? What were
Uh,
any other words of wisdom?
he told me to basically buckle down because owning a business is extremely hard. And and you hear those things and you don't quite know, right? Until you
You
own a
don't get it.
business. You just don't. And I thought,
Uh,
oh, I've been doing this for 6 months. I thought I knew. I did not know. But he was right. I ended up working, I think, the first full year I was doing it, I think I worked 16-ish, 18 hours a day, probably about 345 days of the year. One man band here trying to get it off the ground running. And it was very exciting, but extremely hard. It's still extremely hard. You know, it comes and goes.
yes, the hard gets harder and a little bit less hard, but it just keeps but there's always something hard there to work on, right?
There sure is. That's
Um,
right.
what were some of those buckle down moments that you've experienced now?
Well, I'll tell you, managing cash flow, I think, is something that was a little bit surprising to me. You end up, let's just say you sell 4 or 5 roofs in a week, and you all of a sudden get $70,000, that you're bringing in, and then you think that a lot of that, or most, if not, all of that, you get to keep, and that's just not the case. And when you're first starting your business, you get a lot of money like that. You tend to want to spend it a little bit. Out of your means. I didn't go too far on that. I was fairly smart on that, but I had got myself in a little bit of a pickle there for a bit. I learned a hard lesson, and I had to pull some money out of my savings to cover for some stuff. You know, I don't. I don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul, so I had to make sure that I did that. That's a very hard lesson that I had to learn, and that's a pretty big problem in this industry I've learned.
I think that's a problem in business in general too. There's a it's a mental game. When you see money coming in, for some reason, you don't think it'll ever slow down. You don't think it's
Yes.
gonna go backwards ever, right? I think that
Yeah.
I think it's a challenge, and it's a unique challenge right now in the industry as a whole, across the country, that this year I've talked to a lot of contractors who are really feeling a downturn in their
Yeah.
market, and, it takes a lot there's been a lot of slow response operationally to the change in the sales side, lower sales, but having the overhead of a $5 million company, but not on pace to do 5 million, having the overhead of a $10 million company, but not on pace to do 10.
That's right.
There's there's a lot of challenges because we don't think it's ever going to go away.
That's
And
right.
maybe it's that and so I think that's a big it's a something that we have to overcome mentally, that yeah, this might this there's a chance that we don't do this next year. And
Yep.
so if you have that in your mind, then you have to treat it a little differently. You don't learn that lesson until you got to dig into the savings account.
Until you go
you know
through it. That's exactly right.
right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you learn the
So
hard way, going through that, and I didn't quite understand what winter was like, and I understand in Oklahoma,
mm,
we don't get these
mhm,
brutal winters necessarily, but, we can roof throughout the year, but people don't buy roofs throughout the year, right? So, they're
yeah.
spending money on Thanksgiving trips or something with their family, or Christmas, or you know, so when it comes to wintertime, it's like, "Oh, wait a minute, this doesn't stop, but it gets really slow, and you gotta plan for that." We learned that the hard way too, so, you know.
Yeah, and here in Minnesota, we shut down at Thanksgiving, and we open up at the end of February after, we just go ice fishing for 3 months,
Yep.
and
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know better
that's
than
the
that.
it's the joke, but, like, it's hard to you don't understand the seasonality of a business until you've been through it. Um,
Mhm.
and so how have you then adjusted your projections, adjusted your cash flow management, adjusted your expectations from the experience you've had now, what, 3, 4, how many years has it been now since you
Wait,
started
5
Roughneck?
years. Yep.
5
years.
years. So,
Yep.
now 5 seasons, right? You're starting to, going into the 5th winter or what, you know what I mean? Like, what kind of adjustments have you made? What do you do from a business perspective to prepare yourself, your company, your team, everyone? Because, sales reps don't like it if they're not making money. And,
That's right.
when December comes around and they have to buy Christmas gifts
Yep.
and no one's
Yep.
buying roofs, like, there's a lot of layers to these expectations, not just your bank account. How have you managed that?
Well, part of that is, I would say, um, start doing what we are very good at is building relationships. Because if you start thinking about some of your referral partners, this might be a little bit different direction that you had asked. If you start
That's all
thinking
right.
about some of your referral partners out there, real estate agents, home inspectors, insurance agents, stuff like that. You know, no matter if it's winter or not, these folks still are selling houses. They are still writing new policies on homes that they need to insure. And those things still happen throughout the winter. So if we take a little bit from what Randy Hurtado has said, and you build these relationships and you go out and inspect these houses before somebody writes a policy on that, then you're likely to become, the roofer for that person, or for that insurance agent or for that realtor before they get that going. So, I think of it as more as an opportunity to build these relationships with these folks who still have continued business. It's not necessarily me, it's who is still doing something that has to do with roofing. And those are a
Mm.
lot of our referral partners. So we go talk to those folks and we manage kind of our workload with essentially their help because we're getting business from them. And another way to do that is, if you sell a whole lot of roofs, let's say in September, we could roof 2 houses a day, but maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should just start
Uh-huh.
staggering those out a little bit and let cash flow get more staggered out. So, there's a few things that we like to do. So, but I will say, winter is always surprisingly hard. It last winter was very hard, and I know the industry was down. I've heard roughly
Yep.
26%, right? Roughly. Well, we weren't down last year, so I think that a lot of these things that we have done is just continue to build our retail base, and build our
Yep.
brand. I think that's just really helped us a lot.
So relationships create a multiplier effect. It's not addition, right? So there's, a single go to a homeowner and sell, that's addition, right? But that one relationship to many is multiplication. And so this is what I'm hearing from you and I think it's important for the people listening is how can you have that how can you have those channels of multiplication in your business so
Hmm.
that when people aren't searching as often, when they're not thinking about it often, it's who has your customer. It's a great
That's right.
question to ask. Who has your customer,
Yep,
right?
that's right.
And the people who have your customer are the ones you want to develop relationships with because and a lot of times the best ones are the ones with mutually beneficial
That's correct.
customer relationships, right? And so when that realtor, gets to close on a house because you guys were able to come out and put a new roof on prior to closing or, whatever that happens to be, you just made them money,
That's right. That's right.
right?
We're
And
making
so
we're making them look good.
they're making them look good, making them money, making their customer experience, improving their customer experience. And so looking for those relationships, looking how to improve, how to add value to people, I think it's an overlooked channel. Why do you think it gets ignored so much?
I That's a very good question. I think that a lot of folks are insurance um, first. They're not retail first.
Yes.
I think most companies are insurance first. And so they're chasing storms, whereas I didn't have that. Um, I mean, you can call it a luxury, but I don't really know if it is much anymore, as far as how hard it's becoming to work insurance claims. But I didn't have that luxury. I had to
Mm.
think, how am I going to become known in this area? And to me, it was just a simple thing. It was like, well, who needs my services? Well, home inspectors who can't get up on the roof because it's too steep,
Mm.
insurance agents who need us to go look at a roof prior to them writing a new policy because they don't want to write a bad policy. So let's look at it first. I think it was just out of necessity that I had to go that route. I had to
Yeah.
sponsor the little league teams. I've got a soccer team called the Roughnecks. I got a baseball team called the Roughnecks. And you know, to me, those type of things, the sponsorships, that's my favorite thing to do. I giving back to my community is gives me the absolute most joy out of anything, and it just happens to also help my business in turn, right?
Yes.
So, um, so we like to do those things. So, to me, it was a necessity. I was the the new guy in town. All the other roofing contractors I consider them legacy roofers. They've all been here for 20 plus years. And here I am trying to make a name for myself. So, um, you know, I I had to go after these people and I went pretty hard. I went very hard on marketing. You of all people, Jim, know how important that is. So
Yeah.
I went very hard on it and it's what got me on the map.
What I heard from you is important, and that's that you went hard on it. Um, I think a lot of people miss that. It takes a lot more effort to build momentum than to maintain it.
It does. No
And
doubt.
so, it's the Grant Cardone 10X rule. I love the concept behind that. If you feel like you need to talk to 100 people to close the jobs that you wanna close to hit your goal, go talk to 1,000. Make sure that you will absolutely ensure that you will close the
Yeah.
jobs, right? Like, if you and so I think that a lot of times, uh, we think, "Well, I think it'll take this much effort," and we're just wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, just
You know?
just wrong. That's a good way to
We're
put it. We're
just
just
wrong.
wrong. Yeah, yeah,
We're just wrong. That, if I knock 100 doors, I'm gonna get this amount of jobs. Well, that may be true and it may not be true, right?
yeah,
It's, there if I talk to this many real estate agents or insurance agents, I'm gonna develop this many relationships. That could be true or could not be true. But, like, if you said you wanted 10 insurance agent relationships, and you're like, "Man, if I stop by 25 offices and I bring them all donuts or wine, or, and I stop by every now and then and say hello, and I make phone calls to them, out of those 25, 10 of them should work with me, right?" You know? But what if you said, "No, I need 10. What if I stop by 1,000? Like, let
yep,
me start talking to 1,000 of them. I'm gonna talk to 3 a day. I'm gonna
yep,
3, 4 a day, I'm gonna reach out to. I'm gonna stop in. I'm gonna do," that amount of effort, especially in the beginning, it takes that huge amount of lift to get it going, but then you got something, right? Then there's something there. Um, what other community-based marketing, um, you mentioned the little leagues and things like that. What other things did you do? How else did you
yeah,
become known in the community?
yeah, absolutely. So, outside of the little league teams, we also sponsor the high school football teams, in the area. So, game night sponsorship. So when people walk through the gate to come to the football game, they have to go around our big, huge 12 by 12 tent to get to the stadium, right? So we're out there just giving away trinkets, stuff that
Yeah,
nobody needs, but we're giving that stuff away. We're we got a QR code out there and say, hey, scan this thing. We'll come inspect your roof for free. Just give you a roof health assessment, no charge. We do. Um, well, I'm part of, I think, 3 or 4 chambers of commerces locally,
Okay.
like 3 or 4 different towns here. I'm the president of a BNI chapter. Actually, for the second year in a row, I got voted in as president. So that helps. We do home shows. So, there might be a car show. You got to remember too, where I'm, my market is a lot different than some folks. I am not
For
in a
sure.
massive, I'm not in this mass. I don't live in Houston. I don't live in Dallas. I live in Muskogee. And so my core market's 40,000 people, right? And then there's a whole lot of small towns around that. So if there's a car show, it's a pretty big deal in a town like this. So we go set up a booth at these car
Yeah.
shows, or the barbecue festival, the chili cook-off. We set up those things. So, you know, all these little events and little things we like to show up to and be a part of. It's it those things compound, Jim. They truly do. And Joseph Hughes has the famous line,
Yeah.
being 5 Mile famous. And
Yeah.
I actually had a call with Joe like 2 or 3 years ago, and he told me on the phone. He's like, "Well, you're doing everything that I was going to tell you to do." He's like, "You're good here, man." So we didn't even work together. He's like, "You got it under control." I'm like, "All right, sounds great." So yeah,
Yeah, and that's it. And to those roofing contractors listening that are in those giant markets, you're still in a sub-market,
that's correct.
right? Or you still would like to be known in a
Yep.
sub-market. And so, you can even more intentionally choose the 40,000 people or 100,000 people or 100,000 homes or whatever, kind of whatever you want to choose as an audience. Um, you could choose that. You could choose the area of town. You could choose I've had friends with companies, and clients over the years that, their office was located in an area of town that was more industrial and didn't really
Mhm.
have the type of it didn't, let's just say it didn't have their perfect customer. Right?
Yep,
And
absolutely.
so, we had conversations about, hey, what if you move your office over here near this is where all of those perfect customers are, and now all of a sudden you're showing up in the map for them. Like,
That's right.
so when you're in a small market, you kind of get a benefit of that is you're going to have it, be able to show up more, and there's less going on. There's you don't have to sponsor the Dallas Cowboys, right?
That's right.
Like you could
Yep.
sponsor the local high school team and still, and get that exposure. But you could do that in any and every market in this country. You just have to choose the people that you want to focus on serving. And I
Yeah.
think that that's great, a great lesson for everyone, and become the best known roofer to them. That's it,
That's it.
you
That's all
know?
you're trying to do. And
That's it.
you can focus on things that surround you. Like for instance, if there's a golf club around you, we'll sponsor a golf tournament. We do a lot of that, a few a year. If you've got a lake around you and they do fishing tournaments for kids or
Yeah,
adults alike, sponsor the fishing tournament. There's opportunities around everyone that's listening to this show. It doesn't matter where you're at. There are opportunities to get in somewhere. You don't have to go spend $10,000. You can go
yeah,
do a home show in a small town and put up a tent for $400 and pass out your pamphlets
yeah.
to 1,000 people. And that's 1,000 touch points. We're not trying to sell anything. All we want to do is just say, folks, we are here. We care. Nice to meet you. And they're going to remember that, you know.
That's right. And I think that's a challenge too, for people. They want immediate results, right? We want that immediate, like, well, if I did that home show, Stephen, like if I did that for that $400, how many people would actually download that QR code and fill that out, and how many inspections would I get from that? And they're like, well, man, you might not get any,
Try.
right?
Try.
And you have to be okay with that.
You got to
But
be
you
okay
might
with it.
not get any in the next week or two, but you might get one 3 years from now.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
You know?
And I'm in another roofing group, and I had somebody ask a question, kind of what do I do? And I told them about the sponsorship of the high school team. And they said, well, how many sales did you get out of that? And I was like, I have no clue. And I was like, but I know I made my money back. And they're like, well, how? And I'm like, I know I've made I don't have the exact figures, but I'm not looking to have those exact figures. I'm looking to make these touch points. You know, it's no different than a billboard necessarily. That's just a
That's right.
touch point,
Yeah.
right? It's a touch point. You're
Yeah.
just trying to get somebody to remember you when there's something does happen. Oh, I remember talking to somebody. Oh, I
That's
remember Stephen Roughneck Roofing um, bought my uh, pink jerseys for my little league football team for breast cancer awareness month. We've done that. If somebody has a problem, they're going to give us an opportunity. We're out there helping, the community.
hmm And
So,
that's it. There's a huge value in that, and it is hard to track, and it is. Um, I think this, we talked about you have your storm restoration and retail roofing contractors. I have, over the past, I mean, even 5 years, we just continue to have this conversation about that. I have this conversation with people who are more storm restoration focused that, man, I got to find a way into retail.
that's
Right.
right.
I gotta start shifting that way. And so, you know, what does a retail roofing company have to do every week that maybe a storm restoration company can things that they can maybe temporarily avoid?
Well, so if there's a storm restoration company that wants to get into retail, I'm not sure they can really avoid anything. I think they need to go all in on marketing in the communities that they serve. I think that here's the thing, Jim, is that you want to have a good brand in a town that gets hit by hail or gets hit by a windstorm. You don't want to be a storm restoration contractor that has to go knock doors to get those sales. You want to be the contractor that has the good brand that's very, very well known, because, for instance, Jim, we did have a very small hailstorm that hit a very slight pocket of our town in May 8th. And because of my brand, I end up getting 17 out of those 22 houses. On that one street, we got them all, and the other ones are metal roofs, or yeah, they're metal roofs. They're not getting roofs, so we got all of the roofs that were available because of our brand. You know, so if you think about that, and that just hit one strip of a road. If that was to hit our town, proper, we would be inundated. So I think these restoration companies, these storm chasers, you know, I think they need to start buckling down and setting some roots and really
Mm,
start putting some of that money that they're making back into the community. I think that's the only way that they're really gonna to make progress on becoming a retail focused company. Because if you don't work on your brand in retail, then you're constantly having to knock doors. You constantly have to chase. Whereas I don't have to chase. People call me,
yeah.
right? We're not out there chasing anything. People are calling me. Matter of fact, I've had 2 calls while
Yep.
we're sitting right here on this call on this podcast. So um, I think that you know I go to these conferences. Same, you're there too, and there's a few things that they talk about at all these conferences lately. It's AI, it's the changes in insurance, and it's people moving. Oh, private equity also, and then it's people from moving
Yep.
from insurance to retail. It's like those 4 things is all they're talking about now. So that's just what they've got to do. They've got to do what I had done to start the business. They've got to buckle down and hit up some marketing and go for it.
Yeah. Build that brand locally. I think another part of brand that people don't understand or people don't think about in brand is the customer experience.
So
Brand is the way that the feelings that people get when they see your company name, right? And so, we talked a lot, and I appreciate this, but you've really taken to heart one of my quotes, and that is, If your customers are wondering, you're losing." And so, how have you put that statement into action in developing your customer experience and
Well,
getting
so
that repeat and referral business?
everything we do, and I mean quite literally everything we do, from the football sponsorships to the education foundations we sponsor. I mean, everything we do is geared towards um, making people feel comfortable hiring us as a roofer. Okay, and what
Mm,
that means is customer experience. That it all boils to that. You know, I think it took a little bit for me to kind of learn this, but customer experience is the most important thing. You can put on the best shingle on the market. You can have the best proposals out there. You can have the best wrap truck. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter if you do not communicate with your homeowner as well as you should. And that starts from the very beginning, the call intake. When somebody calls us, we answer the phone with a smile on our face, and we talk to them, and we make them feel very welcomed, and we talk to them about, we don't just sit there and say, yeah, what's your address? I'll be there tomorrow at 2 o'clock. No, we have a 5-minute conversation, about what they're kind of looking for. We set expectations for when we're going to come out there and what's going to happen when myself or one of my teammates show up out there. So I think it all boils down to customer experience and communication. And when you get to the house, Jim, it's just as important to also reiterate what those expectations are when you show up. It Sharing the company cam link with the customer. I think I might have mentioned to you, it's kind of neat when you can share a company cam link with a homeowner. They can be sitting on their couch while you're up there taking pictures of their roof, and they're rolling in, and it's live on their phone. They can't believe it. And you get off that roof and you say, hey, Mr. Smith, did you see that picture of that chimney up there? Yeah, I did. Okay, let's talk about that flashing. And you go back and forth with them, and you're building that trust with them. And I tell customers, I'm sharing these pictures with you because I want you to see every single thing that I see, because I want you to know that I'm not going to lie to you. What I'm talking to you about is what you're seeing right here as well. So sharing those company cam photos, in videos. We also do videos as well about, we do
mhm.
an overview video about, hey, this is our plan of action for your roof. We're going to delete these vents, go back with ridge vent, fix this flashing. So I really feel that customer experience is the number one thing that anyone can do. Um, Really, in any sector of business, any industry out there, it's got to be the most important thing.
It is, and it's so impactful. It's again, it's hard to measure, right? But you can measure it in your close rate, you can measure it in your referral rate, you can measure it in your reviews, you know, but, you know, as you started implementing this, you know, what was the most challenging, where was it most challenging to get good communication or to get your team members to deliver the communication at the level you were hoping for?
Yeah, so I think that we're constantly trying to revise. Because I think
Mhm.
I'm a firm believer there's always something better. We can always improve on that, right? So I think when you're talking to homeowners and setting expectations, I think that was probably something that we struggled with a little bit, as far as, because we're not a one call close company for the most part. We're typically a 2 call close. Homeowners aren't used to that here because my competitors, they show up and give them a one-page piece of paper, and here's your quote. There's your price. Well, we don't do anything close to that. So we have to make sure we set the correct expectations so they know, hey, we're going to order your measurements through Eagle View. We're going to make sure we do that because we don't want to underquote you or overquote you. We want to make sure it's correct. I don't want to hand measure this and do it the wrong way. We're going to go back to the office. We're going to put together our proposal, which is a sumo quote, good, better, best. It talks about, you know, um, roofing materials. We happen to be a Owens Corning preferred partner, and hopefully working our way towards platinum. We really like their products, but we talk about um, why we use Owens Corning, why they trust us. We talk about what those good, better, best options are and why you should probably go with the better, which is a class 3 or a best class 4. So I really think overall, um, making sure that the customer knows the next step is like probably the
Mm,
most important thing that we kind of struggled with at first.
hmm.
Um, we struggled with that. I think that's probably it. And then as long as when you leave there, they know what the next step in the process is. So it takes away that thing, your quote. If somebody's wondering, then you're
Yeah.
losing. If you set
Yeah.
those expectations, what the next steps are, then they're not going to be wondering. You're good, right? So yeah.
And I like that the way you frame that, because if you just, let's say you dump the whole process on them in the intake call, will they really remember it?
They
Will
will
they
not.
remember what the next step is? So you
No.
may run through, hey, this is our process from a high level, but then at each stage of the process, it's here, I want to communicate with you what happens next.
Yeah,
This
I
is
agree.
what happens next. This is the next thing. I like that way of looking at it, and it's probably easier to develop implementation in that way too, because you go, okay, well, what should we tell them next? What do we tell? Let's make sure that we tell them this is the next thing that is happening.
Before we carry on with the episode, let's give a shout out to one of our sponsors. Roofers, let's get real. You're great at building roofs, but are you great at building a steady stream of leads? That's where Job Nimbus Marketing comes in. They know the roofing industry inside and out, and they'll help you dominate Google, Facebook, reputation management, and everything in between. If you want more quality leads, more booked jobs, and more growth, visit the link in the description or the sponsors page on the Roofing Success Podcast website. I talk to contractors every day that feel stuck. Not because they're not working hard, but because they're missing the structure to growth without chaos. Or their culture's falling apart because their team's unclear, unaligned, or just burned out. And when change hits, they're reacting instead of leading because time and priorities aren't under their control. Day 41 Thrive helps to fix that with proven strategies for growth, culture, and leadership that actually work. Ready to thrive beyond the storm? Visit the link in the description or visit the Roofing Success Podcast website on the sponsors page to start your journey today.
Let's make sure that we tell them this is the next thing that is happening. Um,
I'm not sure if you can hear me, Jim, but I cannot hear you and I do not see you.
all right, am I back? Give me one sec. I think I muted you while I was trying to do that. Let's see if you can unmute. Unmute. There we go. I unmuted
Okay.
you.
Okay.
All right. Yep. I don't know why I have a direct, I plug my DSLR directly into a charger, and for some reason, the battery died in the middle of it for whatever reason. So,
Technology, man.
tech technical difficulties. We'll throw
That's
another
right.
mark here. All right. All right. So, you know, I think that most contractors have terrible communication.
Correct.
We love the framing of making sure that the homeowner knows, right? We can't let them wonder what's going on. The biggest challenge that I see in trying to implement things like this is what you want, how you want to communicate, and how the team communicates. How have you incentivized? Do you have certain carrots or sticks that go along with, with this client, with the customer communication? How have you gotten your team to buy in to the same level of communication that you're expecting? I know that this is a struggle, and because it becomes a friction point, it gets abandoned. And so it sounds like you continued to push, and you continued to say, "Hey, no, this is how I want." So how have you worked that with the team?
Well, by focusing on their sales and their close rates. So if we
Mm.
don't communicate well, we don't get the sale. I mean, it's as simple as that. I don't incentivize the guys. I talk to them about, hey, this customer said they chose somebody else because they didn't hear from us. You were 2 days late. They didn't
Um,
know. Because what happens is, Jim, is the communication is between the homeowner and the salesman. Well, then when there's a problem, that homeowner is now calling me, right? They call the office phone, and I end up answering that. So I know what happens, and I will just talk to them and be like, "Listen, you lost this sale because you did not communicate well." And we have
mm,
automations that we're doing in Job Nimbus, which I know you're a big fan of, and
yep,
so, we've got automations that are in play now to help with some of that. Um, but realistically, it's just a matter of beating it into them, and myself too. It was a process for me to learn. Hey, you really got to this is you really got to put yourself in the customer's shoes. We ask every customer, how would you like to be communicated with? Is it via text, via phone? Because some people will not answer their phone, which is so wild to me because I think that's the best form of communication, but some folks just won't do it. It's odd. But you know, eh, we just talk about it as a team. We have morning huddles every single morning
mm,
from 8 to 8:15, and it's something that we discuss. So if there was something that happened the day prior, well, we're gonna talk about it as a team. So I think it's just a constant communication within ourselves to say, "Hey, we have to stay on top of
yeah.
this."
Something that if you keep it part of the conversation, right? What you focus on grows. Like,
It
what
does.
you focus on expands, and if you continue to have it as part of the communication, and I think that's a great point of saying, "Hey, you lost this one because of this," right? Like,
Correct.
if you'd made the phone calls in the cadence that we wanted, phone calls and text messages in the cadence that we wanted, and you did this, and you know, man, that could have been some money in your pocket, you know?
No doubt.
Um, so I like that aspect of it. Um, in terms of I like also that the way that you're doing the company cam, um, photos live on the inspection, right? The homeowner doesn't have to take your word for it. They can see exactly what you saw. I feel like it's a no-brainer. I can't believe people who would not use a photo app like Company Cam in their process. Do you still see people not do you have competitors that are not doing stuff like this?
That's correct.
How
They are not.
how crazy is that?
It blows my mind. And, it's not just the company cam that folks don't do. It's they don't do proposals.
Proposals. Yeah.
Yeah. I've told somebody this one time. Sumo Quote made at one point in time. Sumo Quote was the number one thing that customers told me sold the job for them. Can you believe that? So my proposal, because it was a 21 to 25 page proposal, was the number one thing. I had a church. I was $6,000 higher than the next closest competitor. And this other guy has been here for 30, 40 years. I was $6,000 more expensive than them. And this church went with me. And I asked them why. And they said, well, your proposal is what sold us. He said, we sat down with the elders. He said, your proposal sold that job. So I
Mhm.
asked about my competitor's proposal, and they said, well, they gave us a one-page sheet of paper and carbon copy sheet of paper and said, here's your quote. So, I, you know, having something that shows, like our proposal talks about, I was telling you earlier, like the roof components that we partner up with Owens Corning, that we has a good, better, best part of it. It shows that we give back to the community. It's got pictures of us on the football field with sponsorships, all of that means a lot to these homeowners because what these folks are looking for is they're looking to be educated to make the right decision for their home. And if you don't provide them with that education, um,
Yeah.
then what are they going to do, right? Then they're making a decision without having all the knowledge at hand. So they're not going to feel good about that. You have to make sure that they feel good about that decision. And these proposals, the company cam photos, all of that stuff is building that trust and that customer experience as we talked about earlier, and it really helps. I mean, it really helps our business that we do that.
In this process, you have a 2-call close. Most of the time, you said you don't focus on the 1-call close. You focus on an educational process. You know, this may sound like it slows the sales process down, right? Um, what is in sales, you still have to create urgency. There still has to
For
be some urgency, right? So what does maybe ethical urgency look like versus pressure in your sales process?
Yeah, so let's talk about urgency. I'm a big fan of speed to lead. Okay, so we answer the phone every time it rings, right? And the calls I missed earlier, it rolled over to my salesman, so we didn't actually miss those calls, right? So speed to lead. We want to be out to look at that roof very quickly, as quickly as we can. So we get out there very quick. So we want to be the first roofing contract out there, and we want to set that bar really high.
Mm,
And
mhm,
then realistically, Jim, there's not really a lot of urgency that I have seen um, beyond that because once you're there and you set that bar really high and you set the expectations for what we are going to do in our next steps, I don't have to really worry about an urgency thing because I've set those expectations. It's so
mhm,
crucial to do that. We talked about it just this morning actually with my team. Um, so I really don't have that problem. I know that some folks probably do, but I tell my guys, communication fixes everything. I firmly believe it. Communication fixes everything. So if you're setting those expectations when you're the first person out there, hey, this is what our next steps are, and this is why we are going to come back out tomorrow and talk about your proposal. You tell them why you're doing that. One, we want to order this Eagle View. We want to make sure that we're quoting you correctly. Two, we want to give you a proposal and come back and talk to you about what your options are and let you know, what we think a good option for you would be, but let you talk, tell us what you want,
mhm.
you know, talk about financing options. It's really hard to shove all that into a one call close. You know, people do it and I'm very aware of that. My friend Chuck Toki is a big proponent of one call close and it works great for him. But for us, we have found that eh, s- a two-call close gives folks some time to think, and they also understand that we're not trying to rush them when we do that. We are,
Mhm.
you know, people don't like to be rushed. I tell folks we're in a flyover state. It's hard to rush someone that's got the same accent that I do. We're country folks. You're not going to
Yeah.
rush us. So I think as long as you set the expectations and set the bar really high in your initial appointment, I think you're okay.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, as you're going through this process, the goal is always to build that trust and eliminate the fears of the homeowner, right? And so your communication, the photo reports, slowing down the sales process, you know, what fears do you see your homeowners having most often? And outside of what you already do, if there's anything else, is there anything else you do to help to reduce those fears?
Yeah. So I think the fear is roofing contractors. I think there was a stat say they're like the least trusted out of the home service community, right? So I want to reduce that friction there. So,
Right.
like
Yeah.
for instance, partnering up with OC and being able to provide, or having Owens Corning provide, pardon me, a 10-year workmanship warranty to these customers. Not just me providing, they are providing that. And they're a billion-dollar company, whatever they are. They've been around forever, so they are providing that to my homeowners. That's something that we can help reduce that friction. We're part of the good contractors list now.
Mhm.
They called me up and asked me if I wanted to be a part of that. So we went through that vetting process, and that's something that we were very proud of. We talked to our homeowners about that and say, hey, you're backed by this $25,000 risk-free guarantee that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. So all this stuff that we're doing is reducing that risk, reducing that friction. That nobody else provides, around here. So I think that that's stuff that we really do to just you know help the homeowner feel like they are in good hands. And Jim, if you start marrying that up with how well our brand is in our local communities, it really all starts funneling down
Mhm.
to it's like, okay, why would they hire anybody else?
That and maybe that's the goal, right? Like, to make it so obvious as to why they should choose you,
Yeah.
right? Like, if it just all of these things compounding together make you like, why would you'd have to be crazy, like,
Yep. Yep.
and maybe you could be a delusional entrepreneur like me and
Sure.
but
Absolutely.
like, like, well, you gotta be crazy to pick someone other than me, like
That's
you
right.
you really have to. Like
Yeah, that's right.
you know,
Unless
and
it's, price. Some people are price driven and,
of
that's in any
course.
market you're at. And, we're not the cheapest contractor. Nobody that provides the value that we do is going to be the cheapest contractor. And, you know,
Yeah.
we try to weed those folks out initially on that first intake call. I ask questions that kind of help me know that initially. So,
Yeah. We talked about not being the multi eight-figure company, right? And that a lot of times on the stages and on my show too, right? We get I have a lot of people who have really been through it and achieved some outrageously high levels of success. That sometimes those lessons don't feel the same to someone that's in that 2 to 5 kinda range, right? And so, you know, what is uniquely difficult or different and difficult about that stage that that you may see as different than the multiple eight-figure contractor?
well, so if you think about, in those eight-figure contractors, multiply, they've been through it too. They were my size at
That's
one
right.
point as well. So,
That's right.
um, something that I think, at this size, the 2 to 5 million size, for instance, I can't walk away from my business for 2 weeks and just have my phone shut off. That's not an option at where we're at. I don't have a middle management group, that can just step in, whenever I need. I can't go out and hire, someone to just be my AI person, with all the changes coming in. So I think that the main thing is a lot of it hinges on the owner. When you're about
Yeah.
my size, still a lot of it is
Yep.
is hinging on the owner. Now, you know, we're obviously working towards fixing that. Standard operating procedures helps with that,
Always.
right? I mean, and I have them, they're behind my computer here. So we're working on those constantly too. And, um, you know, I think that the biggest thing though, when to answer your question is that, a lot of it hinges on the owner or whoever's essentially running the
Yeah.
business. And, I have to be involved in almost every decision that's being made of any value, right? And that's a pretty big deal. It's a big step to take. That very next step is going to be a big step to hire
Mm.
a middle management type person. That's a pretty big step. That's not going to be cheap,
Yep.
and it's going to take a lot more of my time to get that person trained up. So I'd say, that's kind of where we're at right now as a business.
Yep. So in your stage of business, then there's you have to be focused on your time management, I would assume. How do you manage your time to be able to sit in multiple seats, to be able to answer the questions, to be able to, you know, jump in on a homeowner conversation when needed? How do you manage your time?
Yeah, that's um, like a madman is probably the answer. At times it feels that way. I get up pretty early. I work a lot before the sun comes up. I work a lot after my wife and kids are asleep. And that's just what it takes. My wife also works for the business as well. I plucked her away from teaching because I needed someone to run the books and someone that I could trust. So, um, having her that I can start delegating things to has helped a lot. I've got a VA. She lives in Honduras. She's great. I'm starting to delegate stuff off to her as well. So I think my time management really boils down to I can do better with that if I delegate more. But as you know, that's a difficult thing. It really is. My whole background all my life has been managing people essentially, and it's always been difficult to delegate things to folks when you know that you can, or you, at least you think you can do it better than they can. But that's not always the case. My wife's much smarter than me. Most people are, in my opinion. So, you know, I really need to delegate because most likely folks can do things better than me.
How do you feel like you're going to get past this? How do you feel
I
like you're going to, like, what are you going to have to do personally to say, man, like, I have to, or what's the breaking point for you? Is it that when you're working the mornings and evenings, you still don't have enough time? Like, what's going to be rock bottom for you, Steven, to where you hire that number two or that person? Where do you think that is for you?
That's a hell of a question, and I truly think the answer is when my time allocated to this business starts affecting my family. That
Mm,
would be the catalyst for sure. And I'm not saying it doesn't
okay.
at this moment.
Yep.
I'm not
I
saying
was
it
gonna
doesn't.
say we could call your wife. We could
Yeah,
call your wife
that's
right now and
let's not do that because she would probably say it's already affecting the. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
probably there, Jim. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm probably there. I probably need to take that leap. And
Okay.
maybe by this fall, the business will be in a decent spot where I can make that jump. And I planned on doing it. So I'm hoping that everything rolls the way it's currently rolling, and then I could bring somebody in this winter, kind of have quote downtime to get somebody
Yep.
trained up, and then come springtime we're ready to roll after essentially after spring break things start hopping off. So
Yeah. Um, I was told that it was just as a concept, if you can hire someone in your business that takes enough time off of your plate to do money generating activities that will lead to paying their salary within 90 days, it's time to hire that person.
That makes a lot of sense.
What Right? And so we'll just do a little exercise, right? Because a lot of people are in your shoes, right? Like there's a lot of contractors out there in your shoes, and I think it'd be helpful there. Like, what if, you know, have you thought about the salary that you may have to pay that person? Do you know what role it is in your company? Do you know what role it'll be?
Um,
Have you
so
said it's gonna be someone that's gonna run production? Is it someone that's gonna manage your sales team? Is it like, what's that role to you? What that in your vision here, like, what's the role? Is it, of what are their job duties?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So I would think that there's a little bit of um, their job duties would be to do a couple things. One, go out and start talking to, building relationships. Go to the BNI meetings that
Mm,
I'm the president of. Start going, visiting chapters. Start going to these insurance agents. Start going and just building relationships. That is that's a revenue generating activity, right? It's
for
not
sure.
direct, it's not door knocking, but
Mm,
that is a revenue generating activity, right? So,
yep. So that's a
um,
business development person,
that's
maybe?
exactly right. That's correct. Business
Or
development.
or you could go that route, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. This is my coach hat on, Steven, so just bear
Absolutely.
with me. It's not the interview's gone into coaching, into a coaching session, but it's all right. Um, I love I love these conversations. I think it'll be helpful for people too. It's like, how do we think about this? The first place your mind went was to someone who could go and generate revenue. What other aspects of the business could be taken off of your plate so that you can do more of that? Because it sounds like you're good at it.
It-
You've done a really great job at it, and I think a lot of times we think the next person should be the one that replaces our best skill set
mm,
when that's not the case, right? A lot of times we need to get we need someone to replace us on the things that we don't like and we're not as good at. And
right.
so, I'm just, throwing stuff out there, but like for people, when you're ready to, take that time off of your plate, it's like, this is, man, a lot of times it's like, well, just hire another salesperson and they go sell and I could go do this. But man, if you're a good salesperson, that may be a problem, right? If you go and hire a business development person and they go and develop all these relationships, they're not relationships with Steven and Roughneck anymore. They're relationships with that person. And if that person leaves your company, then those relationships may leave your company, right? So, and I'm just throwing stuff out there, but then if we went the other way, we found someone that could take operational tasks
Mhm.
off of your plate, job site supervision, maybe something like that, where then it allowed you to go to all those meetings and go and
Yep.
network more and do the things. Now you could go and generate a couple of extra jobs every month that would definitely pay that person's salary, right? And so we get to think about these things in a lot of different ways. And what's my favorite thing about business is that it's choose your own adventure,
Right. Absolutely. And I will
right?
tell you, so I've got written down right here, um, next hire integrator. I've got it written down right here on my
Mm,
computer. So I consider myself a visionary for this sales,
yep,
marketing, business development. I do consider myself that role. The four quadrants,
yep.
it's what I like and I'm good at, right?
Hmm.
What I dislike and not necessarily good at is
Yeah.
the 50-foot view things, the job costing, the
Yes.
making sure that all of the invoices are accurate. It's lining
Yep.
up the crews. So the integrator role is actually, I should have just come out and said that. I was just kind of thinking it,
Yeah,
but
no,
the integrator
that's a
role,
good Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good and this is, we're just having a conversation here. You didn't have
Yeah.
to be perfect with it. Like, and I put you on the spot into a coaching session. So, it's all right.
Yeah.
Like,
It's great. I love it.
um, but
But that is
but that
the spot that I
integrator
want to do.
operational and so an integrator is an EOS term. It's an
Yep.
operations person for sure.
Yep.
Someone that sits in that. So I'm thinking, so they're on the productions. This is a
That's correct.
production team member. This is someone who's, scheduling, invoicing, work orders, really being, in the job costing on every single job, making sure that that we have the profitability that we need, making sure that the jobs are estimated properly, maybe catching some of those things before it goes into,
Yeah.
before you're out there building the
Yep.
job, before you're losing money, and those, someone in those details. And then, in your area, what's a good salary for someone like that,
Yeah, so
right?
realistically, yeah, it's you're I'll just tell you, I mean, it's you're probably pushing
Yeah,
anywhere between 50 and $70,000, It's
yeah.
I would think somewhere
So
in that
70
is
plus, yeah, so
in
70 we'll say on the high end, we're talking about like 90 after FICA and all the
that
different, right? So we're
you
we're
got it.
saying 100,000 a year, right? And so, what do we need to sell to net 100,000 to pay
Yep.
for that person? And we start adding to the goals. One of the things that was really helpful to me along one of the weirdest mindset shifts that I had is when we started doing capacity planning based on our revenue goals and where we thought we were going to sell and things like that. And it was like, hey, this is when we'll need this person. This is when we'll need this person. This is when we'll need this person. Myself and our sales team I started changing the way we looked at our sales numbers to be like, if we hit this, we get this person. And that was a mindset shift for me. And maybe it'll be helpful for you and others that like I started looking at it like that. And that was it changed the way I looked at the goal on the board. Before that, the goal on the board was a little bit more arbitrary,
Yep.
right? Now I know what that revenue can accomplish, right? I know that how what that's going to do for my day to day. I know what it's gonna do for my team's day to day if we get this person in place, right? And I know what it's gonna do to our customer experience. I know what it's gonna do, right? And so it changed the way that I thought about our revenue goals. And so hopefully that's helpful for people. Um, it's been a lot of fun. We get a lot
It
of fun
has.
here. A little different at the end than most. I'm doing more and more coaching. And it's really, I really enjoy it more. So I love to hear what everyone else is doing, but maybe we can run through, I'll do this a little more often and run through some exercises like this. What is kind of to finish it off in that customer experience? Um, what local marketing activity would you no, that's not a good one. Keep them all. I'm trying to
Yeah,
think of a
that's
good one here,
I was my brain was already starting to think about what you were trying to say. I was like, "Oh boy."
What do roofers overcomplicate?
Oh, for sure building relationships with referral partners. Yeah,
Uh-huh,
I think that they think that it's too hard to do, too time consuming. But realistically, it's calling a home inspector and saying, "Hey, my name is Stephen Lane. I'm with Roughneck Roofing. You may already have a roofer. Please let me be your backup. I'm available whenever you're ready." Or it's walking into an insurance agency and say, "Hey, I'm here. Um, I know this is only going to be a 2-minute conversation in my brain when I walk in. I mean, I'm here. This is who I am. You probably already have a roofer, and that's okay. Let me be your backup." It does not take anything more than that to get these conversations started. Um, I
mm,
think I think having referral partnerships um, is crucial for this, and I think contractors are afraid to go talk to people. I As crazy as that sounds, I think that they're afraid to go talk to other professionals. They're okay with talking to homeowners, but other professionals, I think that they overcomplicate it. They think it's difficult for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah. I
It's
think
easy
you're
for
spot
me.
on, man.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on. People overcomplicate the conversations for sure. Awesome. Thanks for your time today. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the Roofing Success Podcast. For more valuable content, visit roofingsuccesspodcast.com. While there, check out our sponsors for exclusive offers, shop for merchandise, and sign up for our newsletter for industry updates and tips. Also, join the Roofing Success Facebook group to connect with other professionals and stay updated on the latest trends. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment. Your support helps us continue to bring you top industry insights. The website link is in the description. Thanks for listening.